the right one, Mayor.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, if we're all ready, I'll call us to order. Call to order our city council meeting for the whole for Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020 at 5:35 p.m. A couple of notes here on the good of the order. Councilmember Matt Iyer won't be here tonight. He just said he wasn't able to make it. Otherwise, we're all here in attendance. There's a couple of announcements. Jody, you've had a couple for us.
So the school district has asked us to move our COW meeting down to the assembly hall next meeting. And after discussing amongst staff and stuff, we just thought it would be easier if we just had the whole thing down at the DVC. So we are going to go ahead and move the 17th meeting to the DVC, the whole thing, the COW and the council meeting. So I just want to make sure that you guys were aware of that. And then there was mention at the retreat about a special meeting on the 24th for legal services contract. And then we are also going to try and get the contract for the compensation study ready for review and potential approval for that meeting. That will also be at the DVC. Because it's a special meeting, wanted to talk to council about potentially starting it a little bit earlier than 7 o'clock. So we can all, get in, get out, and get on with our days.
When is this again?
So that
The
would be,
24th of March, so Tuesday.
so that's the in-between council meetings.
Right,
At what time?
that's what I'm trying to verify with you guys.
So,
Wondering if you guys would mind if we started it at the normal COW time of 5:30, 6 o'clock, if you prefer to start at 7, kind of trying to just gauge where you guys are at with schedules.
I could start anytime.
Okay,
so first, is everybody available that day, the Tuesday, the 24th of March?
Yes,
Jennifer?
the 24th of March.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
And Don, you said you were as well?
Yes.
And timing, what time would you like to start? Jody, you're suggesting 6.
I'm suggesting between 5:30 and 6, but it's not my meeting, so.
I'm available anytime.
6.
6?
I could probably for sure do 6, I might be able to do 5:30, I just have to check.
Okay.
If you want me to.
6 is probably
6
easier
works.
for everyone.
Okay, 6 o'clock.
Okay. So I'll get that noticed as well. And then just a reminder that Stephanie will be taking care of the next meeting on the 17th, so be nice. And she will also help me, she doesn't know this yet, but she's gonna help me do the packet for the 24th meeting as well, because I will be at conference the whole week, that whole week of the 16th, so.
So I think everyone saw we're passing around the sign-up sheet to meet with Mike Pendleton. And there are several dates between the 10th and the 19th of March. They're 2-hour increments, so if you haven't seen that and signed up, please take a look. It looks like several have. I signed up under lunch, was that okay?
Right?
No, it was open every day. Steve, you also had a couple items. Do you want to talk about the parks that's coming up?
Whatever you want to slide me in.
Why don't we do it now? This would be a good time. So this is related to the
Oh, sorry, Steve, I didn't know you had a.
Big Rock project.
It is related to the Big Rock project.
So there's 2 new parks coming up. I mean, the short of it is there's 2 parks. We had met with them to talk a little bit about landscaping, and Steve wanted to just touch base with council and dive in a little bit deeper.
Just want to make sure everyone is aware and we're all on the same page, because what our plans dictate has long-term ramifications. So the parks plan, well, it slides in here. Parks plan talks about this area and neighborhood parks having fixed structure restrooms. So like the ball fields, like down at the depot, not a porta potty under hidden structure like at Judd Park, right? So staff want to make sure we're just informing everybody. Our plan says bathrooms, so we have options. One, I'm sure the developer would love to not build a bathroom. So we could pad it out, get utility stubbed, and go that route, or we can force them to build a bathroom for comp time. They do get credit for their improvements. They are worried they're gonna maximize their credit. For the record, it's recording. I'm not worried about them maximizing. I want them to make sure they build what they're supposed to build as far as our standards. So with that said,
Sorry. I didn't really, this takes a while. I didn't
know it
know
took
if you were
so
gonna
long,
have
sorry.
anything.
So that's kind of the long and short of it. There are 2 neighborhood parks. The larger one now I'm talking about is in Toll, which is split into 2 in 1 acre, right? They will be bisected by the roads. There's kind of a more natural setting one and then more of a field-sized one with some sport court areas. That process has gone through, public process and shredding a couple of years back. The other one will be Rio Vista, which is still greater than 1 acre neighborhood park. I don't know how many restrooms we need. Currently, there's a physical connectivity between 143rd and the Toll project unless you go down to 3rd and back around. So it's under SJL, it's under DUV. Next time I will advise.
Sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
It's nonsense. Okay, so there were some visuals here, just showing everybody out our plan. And if you go to Appendix E in the PTOS, which is, I cannot find on our website, it's only on the network, it shows kind of these layouts, which all are kind of symbolic in layout of some of the components in the Big Rock project off of Walden. But every one of them showed a fixed structure restroom, and it was also written in the narrative. So I'm like, well, I can't not say that we're gonna do that. And then the green shaded area is the Toll Brothers piece, 2 acre piece here, 1 acre piece there, and that's the Rio Vista sport court and other play area equipment on top of the vault, and trails around the sensitive area, going to another sport court behind, and then trails will lead back out to the neighborhood 143rd. I'm just gonna assume the next page is just Toll itself. Where's am I going? So a little more of a blow up, and this is bisected by the road. That will be actually up here, so they are kitty corner. So the 2 areas I've circled are places we can accommodate the utility service for the bathrooms. We could, in my opinion, if we're gonna do a fixed structure here, I don't know that we need 2. 1 is probably enough. So you think about when you're at any of our parks, how many times you go to the restroom with a kid? Well, every time you're not prepared, you have to go to the bathroom with them. So I think 1 is reasonable, and this is 3 acres, it's 300 feet here, that was kind of centrally located here, that they could come over and use this one, or vice versa. Sewer stub, honestly, for the upper one, there is no sewer in this main frontage road right here, so we would have a service lateral like you would in a home, so it would be simply accommodatable here, but there's play features there, there's courts and fields here. I'm kind of ambivalent. I think on the bigger park probably makes more sense. I do believe that we could rent that space out in the future for micro soccer games for Snow Valley, and any other of the leagues, little T-ballers and whatnot, if we could find a renter. But I just want to make sure you're aware, because fixed structures come with fixed costs. Not that porta potties don't, but it's a lot easier to write a $110 check every month for porta potty service than it is to accommodate the restroom and repair breaks in it, remove damaged graffiti, all that comes with our restroom. So staff just wants to be clear. We want to make sure you're aware it's coming. Our plan does call for fixed bathrooms. I am fine with the CXT model of concrete. It's a little boring looking, but they are easy to manage. They're fairly all self-contained. And we have, of course, the 2 structures we have now, one at the depot and then one up at the ball field are the same style of structure. I think that is all. Yes, I want to make sure you guys are aware, and I am here to chat. And and then take as little time as possible, as much as you want. Go.
Councilmember
Are they,
McHenry.
are they gonna be able to be locked, like, or the
Mhm.
bathrooms, yeah, so they would probably be locked at what, dusk or something like that?
Technically, or yeah, it's dusk and dawn.
Okay.
We are working on that. Just quickly up at the ball field, working on the camera system, since it's gonna be too expensive to get other conduits and service from Wave up there. It's the same price per month to get LTE service essentially through cell phone, and that way we get direct data like we are at Doherty. So we're working on that right now, but then also that becomes our network hub, and I'm gonna work on changing out the locks, because they are like an old style dial that just comes, you set the time and it goes on and off, which means it opens and locks the door at certain times. So we're gonna change those out to more of a, computerized model, where then once we get that place set up with cameras, it will be Wi-Fi enabled, then we'll have Wi-Fi access. So same thing here. Honestly, development community's putting it in. We're gonna have a restroom and some play structure. We're probably gonna look at having them do some cameras as well.
That was
For
my next
security.
thing. I was just thinking, since
Mhm.
you're doing everything anyways, make sure that there's a hookup possibly, even if we can't do it right away. One more
Yeah.
thought, just if that's okay, it's my last one. I'm fine with just one bathroom. My only thought was how often vandalism, I mean, it hasn't been too bad lately.
Well, it's
Or
our
is it-
fault. Yes, the
Okay.
guys don't tell me every time,
Okay.
and not always is it physical vandalism with breaking things and
Right,
spray paint,
okay.
but disgusting stuff.
So that was my only
And I just told them
thought,
they have to start taking more pictures for me to know there's much
Right.
disgusting stuff happening.
is if something happens
Mhm.
and it has to be closed
Right.
for repair, then at least you have the other one.
Yeah.
But I don't know that we need to plan for that scenario,
They
but
make
it's just.
singles, doubles,
Yeah,
quads, and et cetera, so we would probably do a double.
Okay.
Yeah,
So knowing what we have to pay for whenever we try to do it, I would be very supportive of them doing it.
Oh, yeah, correct. Right, we do prevailing wage, public bidding process, they're just gonna hire it out.
So I'm not interested really in just stumps and concrete. I would want a full bathroom.
Yeah.
Councilmember Natman.
I'm not a huge fan of the appearance of the modulars.
Yeah.
Is there, I'd really like to get away from that. I mean, I'm just wondering how much more difficult it is to take care of a block built or a stick frame just for vandalism purposes. I just,
Paint's paint, you can paint anything. The only thing difference if you go to maybe Jeannie Hansen and Snoqualmie, they're the same kind of modular structure, but they are wood stick framed. So they just wear a little faster, right? All we have to do is roll up, either spray these things off and then paint them. You're not gonna damage them, you're not gonna ding them, you're not gonna have rotten siding. So that's just the things to consider.
so what about, it seems like a lot of them that I see are made out of like blocks, you know?
The CMU stuff.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I don't know.
I'd have to look at those.
I just looked at a lot of other, been in a lot of parks
Yeah.
over my
I think
many years of
Parago-
children, and I just do not find the ones we have attractive.
Yeah.
I think they look a little plasticky, or, I don't know, there's something about them
Well,
I do not like.
Sure, and then it's gonna be, we're the ones who review and approve, so if I force, they're probably gonna want something that looks a little nicer. So I'm gonna have to probably push them back to something more manageable, which may be something in between, like high-end, standard concrete, and we meet in the middle.
I just don't think that, I mean, $250,000 is a lot of money,
Mhm.
I guess is what I'm saying. And it seems like, is that just an easy route to go? Is it necessarily less expensive? I don't know, I'm just, I guess I'm struggling with thinking that $250,000 for a bathroom.
Yeah, when we would build
Yeah.
it, it's easy, cause it comes, you drop it in, it's plumbed,
Right.
it's electrical passed, it's just turn it
We aren't in
on.
the business of building stuff.
Right,
They're
well,
in
and
the
if we
business of
were,
building stuff.
well, no, but you would, yes, we are in the business of building stuff, but if we were to build it how we want it, we have to spec every item.
Right,
So that faucet, that Purell soap dispenser, the water sink, all the handles, you have to spec it all, right? That's the beauty of CXT, you don't get to spec it, you get to pick how many toilets, how many sinks, and it shows up,
Mhm.
right? So.
Maybe no one else agrees with me, so I don't
Yeah.
wanna waste much time. But
I just wanna make sure, one, you guys know there's a stick
yeah.
frame structure coming, and two,
There's a what?
it's a built structure coming.
Oh, I said stick frame.
I did say that.
Oh, okay.
It's
Yeah,
interchangeable.
I think having one bathroom for the two locations
Is reasonable.
is plenty. I just, ongoing maintenance, is there any possibility that their HOA would wanna take care of it?
No, I'm not getting credit for it. It's public park.
Okay.
That's the kicker. It's the bad part. But I did ask our new finance director what sort of revenue we would expect from the new 250 plus homes up there. So I know it goes elsewhere, but we certainly could figure out what we want to do with that. Revenue.
What we're gonna do with the revenue? We'll be lucky if it just keeps up with the inflationary cost and of existing.
Other input or thoughts on the park restroom? So Steve, what I'm hearing is one would probably do it.
Something.
So logistically, is this the way they're laid out? So if you're at the 200, or if you're at the smaller 1 acre park, you have to walk over to the other one and walk all the way around to the far side? Or can you have the restroom? I mean, ideally, the restroom's across the street from, you know, so you're not walking it around.
Right, so if the restroom's fitted here, you're just gonna walk.
Okay, yeah, that would work.
Yeah, I think we'll try to put it between this kind of park space. This is like a sport court basketball area. There's another little climbing structure. More climbing things up there for kiddos. Yeah.
The one other thing is, the littler children will mostly be, I would think, at the other park.
Mhm.
And so, you know, if you're a mom with a bunch of toddlers and you have to take them to the bathroom versus older children who might be playing on the field, that's my only sticking point. And there's also a rentable shelter, I believe.
Yeah, that'll be
The one-
here.
Oh, I thought there was that whole,
This is
for some reason I
very,
thought this whole area was like this open courtyardy rental covered
this,
area now.
this is their engineering plans, which shows what is not fact. They have a whole separate set of parks plan that is not actually shown here. So. But it's, I really, I mean, as close to the intersection as possible without it standing out and becoming an eyesore and or blocking, you know, sight distance. We can get as close there too as possible.
Because the one on this side, I think, is more of a sport court
Mhm.
and kind of definitely older kid type things, whereas the other one is definitely more toddler play, water play, potentially, I thought, I'm not sure if that ended up
The
happening.
water's in the Corey house, their private area, I guess.
Okay. So anyway, that would be my only thing, just thinking about parents with little kids having to cross the street versus the other.
Steve, I just want to say, I agree, I'd love to see us upgrade where we can. I know there's an additional cost to keeping those up. You know, when you're at the park and you decide to use a restroom, especially with young kids, you're looking for clean, safe, you know,
Yeah.
well-lit, something that doesn't look like it's going to blow over, get knocked over in the wind. So, and especially on a brand-new park like this, I would like to think we as a city could figure that out, how to keep up our restrooms. And I realize the builder may have some limits on how much they want to spend on it, but it's part of our park plan, part of the overall aesthetics, and it's one of the things we can point to that is a benefit for the rest of the city that are already complaining about the way this looks. So I think there's a good reason to say, let's do it upright and then work on the financing piece. That's my opinion on it.
I think for future too, I mean, I will probably pad out an area in the northern park. If we ever have to expand, at least the sewer, any water stubs are there. If we have to add a second, if there's so much demand, or we put in our own little temporary porta potty or whatever it is, I mean, we have options.
Even if it's a drinking fountain or
Correct.
ones that have a little for the
The dog
dogs,
thing, yeah, absolutely.
just
Yeah.
something that,
Those features.
nice little feature for folks.
So are we deciding we're gonna put it on the other park then? Is that what we're saying? I'm just curious, as a
Right.
parent, I would prefer it on the other one, just because it's definitely where the little kids are going to be, but maybe I'm wrong,
Dan?
I don't know.
So is that two different developers?
No, this is the toll
So
project
it's
right
the
here.
whole
That
toll
one is Rio, and I just kind of put it on here, but the next page is just the blow up of those two individual parks, and I didn't put them on the right sides in my haste. So the toddler thing is, it's either A, people coming to the area where bigger kids may be, or B, bigger kids going to the area where toddlers and parents may be. I would prefer the reverse. So they're not actually wandering into the little kid area, but then you gotta wander into the big kid area and in and out, so. Partially, so that's one of them. Two, the other comment in my brain is if we are renting this space as a parks facility for soccer, baseball, probably not lacrosse since those balls are hard and it's an open space. Having a restroom in that area, if we are into providing that facility and, garnering revenue for sports field rentals, those two are usually commensurate.
Steve, do you have everything you need?
I believe so. Maybe not everybody's exactly happy, but we have good understanding.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. We can continue on the good of the order here. I will say there's a lot going on with the virus. Mayor, do you have some things you're sharing at council?
Yeah, I've got a
Okay.
complete update for council.
I think we've received some emails, I've been getting daily updates from folks I know that are just trying to keep me updated. I think the good news is, no one knows for a year exactly where this virus is going. But if there's some good news with it, the vast majority of folks that get it have mild symptoms. Very sad news is those that have lung disease, they have compromised immune systems, are really being hit hard by it. It attacks the lungs. So there are fatalities related to this, just an absolute heartache. There's a lot of unknowns, which creates uncertainty. The mayor's been working very hard, both internally with our staff as well as externally with the fire department, Riverview School District, trying to make sure everybody's on the same page and has the correct information, the latest information, because things are changing from time to time. Council's really getting involved with that operational stuff. The two areas that we may be called on over time, one is policy-wise. There's certain policies that are in place that need to be relaxed. That can be sick leave type policies. It can be policies with new hires that haven't saved up any sick leave and are more apt to come to work just because they need, they want to get paid. So those are the kind of policy things, at some point we may be asked to look at. The other is the financial part, whether it's a snow emergency or virus and certain costs involved with that for a city. Those are things that we may be asked to look at too. The mayor would bring those to us. And in huge incidents, we'd often get called to an emergency operations center, whether it's at the fire department or another location. And we would be separate from all the operations things. It's just if they have policy questions, say we need this, whether it's funding and things. That would always come through the mayor, just letting us know what the city needs. So I'm not expecting that necessarily to come about, but it may, and I think we just need to be ready for that. If we have to have a special meeting to come together and be able to provide support for the city. I've seen a lot of the city's internal information and it's being very well done. They seem to have all the latest information, coordinating with folks. So we'll hear more from the mayor tonight, but I just wanted to let you know that I think we're doing a good job with it, ahead of a lot of other cities that are still trying to understand the impacts. I will say from my experience working with other cities around the United States, where it gets really tough for a city is when your own workers get sick. Right now, about 1/4 of the entire fire department in Kirkland is quarantined. And so they have a big overtime bill, because when that shift is on, they have to fill it with everybody on overtime basically. And they're spending about $1,000 a day per firefighter. So you can imagine how quickly that adds up when you've got 10, 12 positions that or more that you're filling every single day. The other part for us would be what happens if, key staff are sick and they can't come to work. So we're trying to come up with a plan for resiliency so that we have a way to fill those critical spots. And so a lot going on, and I'm proud of what I've seen and how how hard folks are working to try to get this right. For our citizens, I am hopeful that we can make sure that there's some links on our own website where people can go, even if it's just saying the CDC, because the CDC, the State Department of Health, King County Department of Health, all have a lot of really good information, and they update it regularly. So most of that stuff's been on television. Yeah, some people are just getting tired of hearing about it, but there's always a chance it will come to our community as well, and I think we just have to recognize that and be ready to have some flexibility internally as we try to maintain city operations and services. Well, I think we can go around the table. Anyone else have anything for the good of the order before we get started? Yes.
I just wanted to give a quick update from the council chat.
Yes, thank you.
So there were several items that came up. One was on vegetation that's either making it difficult to see stop signs, sidewalks that you can't navigate because the vegetation is over the sidewalk. And just kind of wanted, the community member wanted to know, what to expect on that. Do they need to call? Or for some reason, they thought they remembered there being a post about it, that there was going to be an effort, either you clean it yourself or we're gonna come do it, and wasn't sure.
So
Yeah.
That did happen in a couple of areas a couple of years ago. So there's the issue of, and Steve can probably talk a little bit more about what we normally do as far as spring activities and clearing brush. If it's on private property, it's the private property owner's responsibility. The last time we had some major overgrowth, there were some warnings until the city said, and correct me if I'm remembering incorrectly, Steve, the city gave them warnings and then eventually just told them they were gonna go and do it if they didn't do it, and I can't remember what the outcome of that was. But that's part of the challenge. If it's on private property, it's a little harder to force somebody to do it. If it's city property, there's definitely, we've seen, I think, more growth in the winter than we normally do for some of our plants and weeds. And normally those things go in a cycle as far as maintenance. Steve can probably add to that if there's anything to add. But limited resources, it makes it challenging for them to get out and do it when the weather does unexpected things.
And some people get really particular and then quite upset. So we try to reach out. I think it's not reasonable to expect us to reach out to all,
Right.
likely 30 homes. And there are some people who get very upset. And I have a lot of people who call and complain about certain properties that, we have to make the effort to reach out to them on and, fix it or we have to help.
So is this
And if
something they
there's-
should submit to the complaint line?
That's
I think there's a
Yeah.
little concern that, these are neighbors, and to feel like you are
Yeah.
getting your neighbor in trouble, I think there's a level of discomfort about that, so.
They can come into City Hall and fill out the good old fashioned complaint form and leave their information there.
Oh, leave it
Or they can
anonymous.
call
Yeah.
me,
Suggestion.
Jennifer, they can
Okay.
call me too. I mean,
Yeah.
because that just makes it
Okay.
easy. And just have them give me a call on my cell phone and I'll take the information and pass it along. I don't have to write down who they are.
So they, it could be anonymous.
Yeah, and street signs are, if there's something being blocked, then it needs to just, call it in and
Okay,
just gets done. We try to get them to those limbs grow very fast, especially in the
Right.
spring and summer.
and then I'll just go super quick, the rest I hope don't take as long, I didn't mean to take so much time, but just a question about, diversity of housing. Most of the housing coming in is not gonna work for an older person because they're all 3-level, it's gonna be pretty difficult. And so just, is there any effort to try to make, zoning or developers incentivized to create housing that would work for someone who was older or disabled? So I don't necessarily need a response, just wanted to let you know. And then another, just, do we have a dark sky provision to reduce light pollution? I feel like maybe we probably have something in our development standards, but just kind of feeling like, some of the lights aren't shielded down, they just, anyway.
So, yeah, newer ones are shielded, the globes can be shielded, we don't have a dark sky policy, we actually require a certain minimum amount of foot candles or lumens to be sent to the roadway, so it's a tough balance. But the new LEDs that are Cobra arm style with the shield on top, they direct way more light down and very little up, relative.
So if there's
Of course,
a
but-
specific one, they should
Email
once
us.
again,
Yeah.
Yeah.
there's a very specific light that feels
Yeah,
needs to
I
be
think-
adjusted.
Mhm.
Okay.
If I'm remembering correctly, the either Builder or PSC actually went out and put shields on some of the lights at Howard Hill, because that was a big issue. The lights were going into people's backyards, and, you know, in their bedrooms, and it was really, really bright.
Yeah.
So they made amendments to that. It's not too difficult, we just need to know which ones they are, and we can call the appropriate people and see what we can do.
I think they also have a couple of options, Jennifer, on how bright the light is. I think they're, like Steve said, you know, there's a certain amount that they're supposed to put out for the street, but I think they do have a couple of options, so if that's the concern, it's just too bright, they can, but they're all LED now, I don't think there's other options.
But it's a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I will pass that on, and then the next is just, is there a weight limit? They know, these people had noticed there's a weight limit to limit truck traffic on Third when you come up from Cherry Valley Road, and continue all of Third, when does that end? It just wasn't clear what stretch of Third does that weight limit apply to. So I don't know, that might be something you have to follow up on. Because, you know, I don't think we want Third to end up being the truck route to bypass downtown traffic. That would be unfortunate. And then, and I think this one would be for Chief Hurt, about extended parking on streets. You know, at what point does someone get involved, or does enforcement happen if there's a vehicle that's been parked for weeks at a time, or, you know, RVs that are parked that are, you know, maybe someone's getting ready for a camping trip and has it out there for 2 weeks, who knows?
We're working
So-
on updating some of those ordinances, but the biggest challenge is our officers don't have the resources to go and police parking. And so if we get to that point where we're having a big issue, then we will need to consider hiring somebody specifically for parking enforcement. But I don't know that's where we really want to go as a city. There are some nuisance things that have occurred, and updating our policy should help that. There's also some challenges going on with the homeless populations and in parking throughout the region in Port Orleans on what you can and can't restrict on that as well. So it's a touchy subject, but it's also one that I think bothers all of us. I know in my HOA, if you park on the street overnight, you get an email the next day to say, why is your car, or why did you have a car parked in front of your house and not in your driveway? Well, the garage is full of cars and the driveway is full of cars, that's the only place for them to park. And it's technically a public street, so technically it's okay. But depending on your HOA, they may enforce that on their own.
So maybe I just need to get a link to what our
The code.
It should
Code
be in
says-
code,
yeah,
there's the code,
code to say that.
parking code, and then
And there's also, I mean, these are all things that we get at City Hall a lot, you know, as far as complaints and requests and stuff. So again, if they, you know, even if they want to use you as the conduit, you know, to say there's a car parked on such and such a street and it's been there for 2 weeks and they don't want to be known.
I think that's a thing, you don't wanna turn your neighbor in.
Right, so,
That's
but,
I mean,
I
I think
mean,
that's also an issue, is that the city should not be policing civil disagreements either, and that's becoming a big issue in code enforcement, where we have neighbors going after one another, and they don't want their neighbor to know, but it's a code enforcement issue, and they have to talk it out, and then the city gets put in the middle being mediator for
Right.
private disputes, so we have to be careful with that as
I
well.
can see that being problematic. So the last one was just power to Taylor Landing. The farmer's market is moving there,
Mhm.
and they really wish they could get some power availability for the farmer's market. And so I think Steve is trying to figure out how that could work, or how much it might cost.
It's money.
Yeah.
I mean,
So-
I think there's probably, I know I'm of the opinion that that park would be more useful if we had some lighting and some electricity, especially in the summer, and especially since it's close to a very popular restaurant and brewery. But it's all about money, so it's not budgeted this year. We can certainly make an appropriation or put it in the next biennium budget if council decides it's a priority.
I guess at one point there used to be electricity and a light there, so the issue is, you know, how much work is it to get that put back on, you know, would it, so anyway, maybe that's something.
Yeah, the old way won't work, it was aerial, fell over in the trees, so
Okay,
that is still undergrounding.
I see, okay, that's good to know. Anyway,
But we're
sorry.
getting a quote on it.
It was a very busy council chat, and so I encourage anyone else here who hasn't done council chats, they're really helpful.
Thank you for covering me.
Oh yeah, it's fun, I don't mind.
Yeah, thank you, very nicely done. Nice to hear about those. Our next item on here is the council retreat follow-up. I've had a lot of nice comments about it. I think there was really a nice amount of energy, especially when it came to talking about facilities. I wanted to recognize Dot again for taking time and some risk about doing something different for us. And I enjoyed just looking around the room and being able to see everybody participating and having input. Certainly on facilities, we need to be able to move that forward, and I don't want to lose that momentum we have. The general thing I got out of it, and there were 2 or 3, but the main one was, you know, we do have a building sitting empty, and let's make a decision what to do with it, whether we're going to repurpose it or lease it out or sell it. And certainly there was a lot of discussion about the Duval Visitor Center as well. I think we realized Dot's memo really covered a lot of ground in terms of all the different factors, you know, the historic part, being able to work with citizens. So there's a lot to it, and it's challenging for us as council members to say, you know, we don't want to make a wrong decision, and what's the best decision. And Amy, as I think you said, you know, it's also tough when you don't have a long-term plan. But I'll bring that back, especially at a Cal, so we can directly spend some time on that, be able to take a little closer focus and see if, you know, one or more of the options starts to rise to the top so we can get to where we make a decision. I think when I was chatting about it with a council member this afternoon, I used the example that if in your neighborhood you had a house that sat empty for a year, most everybody in the neighborhood would look over and go, that just isn't right. So this is, I won't call it urgent, but I think it is a very important topic for us that we move forward. As difficult as those decisions can be, I think it's important for us to put all the information we do have together so that we can, and we may not all agree. You know, we may disagree on the best way to move forward, but I do think this will be one of the more important things we do this year. I wanted to ask, partly because staff, Steve regularly asks, what other information do you need? Was there anything that was really lacking other than the long-term plan in place already? Because I think we all recognize that's a need, something we'd like to work on. Is there other specific information that you would like to take a look at before we get to where we're actually talking and saying which way are we ready to go? Jennifer and Diane?
I put together a little spreadsheet, but it wasn't done by staff, but I found it helpful, and it had, I think about the last 8 years worth of expenses for those buildings, and broke it down into utilities, different things like that. It's just straight off the budget. It was pretty simple. And the revenues that have come in for the different buildings, I felt like it was helpful. So I don't, if that's something that could be provided to council, I think that would be useful to understand.
Do you want to, Steve, do you mind if Jennifer sends that to you? And you can just, sometimes I like to just have staff take a quick peek, and
Exactly.
sometimes there's some information that they already have or they can update, or but would that work if she sends it so you can look and then?
Sure, well, Dana parked up here, she heard money.
Okay.
There's some kind of noise.
And then we'll check the numbers and.
Yeah. Does that work
So,
okay?
I have it right here.
Yeah, let's do that, and then we can get it out to everybody, because I love looking at more information. Sometimes it feels like it gets more confusing,
Right.
the more info we have. But the reality is, we'd like to make a solid decision on data and, you know, and on community input and things, so I think that'll be real helpful.
And the other thing is the capital facility plan tried to break down, the one that was done, I don't know, maybe about 10 years ago, maybe not quite that long ago. I don't think it was that long ago. Anyway, it it looked at, you know, roof replacement, painting, and it did, kind of more some long-term costs of owning a building, and broke it down into how much you have to set aside to do those larger maintenance items. I found that helpful. I don't know if there could just be at least a peak for reasonability on that. Are you familiar with the capital facilities plan? So for each building, there was a breakdown. So just to have a peek at that information, so we would have an understanding of what would be our holding cost if we did keep the building, either building, because I mean, I think everyone acknowledges we'll probably keep at least one, so if we could at least understand how much it costs to keep the building.
I think those numbers were 12 to 14-ish,
Yeah,
2012
that
to
sounds about
14.
right. So they probably just need to take have a look at those, see if they're reasonable, if they're not, update them.
Nationally, there's a lot of companies that maintain city buildings and as well as high rises and large businesses. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's called the Building Office and Maintenance Association in BOMA. It's a group that, it's so large that all these, they formed a group to be able to share info. But they have very specific information. I'll look it up because I think that's it. Building Office Maintenance, I think that's it.
Yeah.
But they have really specific data on replacement costs, and they have complete lists of what you should be looking at, weekly, monthly, yearly, every 10 years type thing. And that might be helpful as we do our long-range planning as well. One of the things that's tough is that there's everyday maintenance, but if you're maintaining a brand new house, it's a lot different than trying to, I think the house that was demolished here last week on First, they got a lot of talk on Facebook as well. But the owners thought, well, let's fix it up, and it was at least $100,000 just to fix it up, remove asbestos and try to upgrade wiring. And so our older buildings are a bit more of a challenge that way. Sometimes it's not just adding a roof, but there's more to it. Yes, ma'am?
So back to the long-range planning and why many years ago, probably 10, I really was in support of and still consistently support the idea of selling the buildings, because not only to put a line item down there to start the process of setting the money aside, however, the money from these buildings won't cover a whole new facility that we need or whatever we're going to do to build the future for what we want to do, whether it's the combination of community center with facilities for our staff. We all know that has to be done at some point. We're already there. But to do that, we have to remember too, we may not start that project till 10 years. Maybe none of us will be here. And so the idea of selling the buildings, thinking about 10 years from now, do we want to have the seed money placed there in that line item so we can start the process? Because we all know planning costs money, studies cost money. To do that kind of structure, we'll have those two things for sure. And so we need the money to do that. And if we sell the buildings, in my mind, we can now put it into the budget and we can start planning for the long range. But until if we don't have the money, we can't. This has been the problem for 10 years.
Yeah.
And so I'm a little frustrated, I will admit it, because until we make that decision and we set aside that funding and we commit to the planning and to the studies and to all the groundwork that needs to happen for those facilities for the future, nothing is going to happen for that. And the longer we delay, the greater the liability for so many other things that we put ourselves into.
Thank you for the perspective. That's so important.
I agree that we need the studies done, but I think it would be a mistake to sell a structure and use that money towards the studies. I feel like we need to find money somewhere else in the budget for that. I just think that's just throwing it out the window, because if nothing ever comes of it, these studies are just there, and I think we need to keep it in the real estate for those 10 years, or do something else. If we're gonna save it for a city hall, that's one thing, but just to spend it for studies, I'm not in favor of personally.
Thank you.
Can I answer
Yeah.
to that? So for Main Street, we had to spend money for a study in order to initiate building Main Street. And so I'm not talking about making a plan that sits on a shelf. We're talking about activating a process that starts, government process that is normal, where we start the studies, we start the planning, and we initiate, every single component costs us money. And for Main Street, that's what we had to do. And I do recall, it was at that point, it was crazy when we were asking, what was the number we asked for the plan?
A lot.
Hundreds of thousands, Steve, do you remember? Hundreds of thousands?
For the original.
Yeah, the planning, and it was scary, we had to take a huge.
Yeah, it was over $500,000, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
for
it was a
phase
big,
one.
big step for us, and, I mean, we had nothing else, just the idea that we're gonna do this project, and we had to all get on board, and so that's the thing with a facility, is we can't move forward until we invest in the process, the long process for the planning, but with the planning comes the studies, so.
What I
that's
get out of that though is, regardless where the money comes from, we need to figure it out. In almost any budget process, there's all these things that you need to do, but at some point there's a line you draw, and there's things that you just don't have the money to do. So then it becomes important to say, what do we prioritize? There's basic services and debt management and things that just, you don't have a choice on. But usually as you get in that list, there are things you can bring above the line and say, yeah, we're gonna fund it, or things you drop down. Those are really tough decisions, but this is one of those, I think this year will be part of that whole budget process where you try to determine, you know, because sometimes we say, is there just new money, but sometimes we have to cut out some other things. You know, my hope is that we're able to, with some of our revenues, be able to have money to be able to really prioritize that and get it done. But it's always a challenge.
Steve, have we ever gotten a professional estimate from an exterminator for the historic flies in the rec center? I was just curious, because if we're looking potentially as one of the options of some sort of leasing situation, we would need to deal with that on a more permanent.
We have, but the real issue is, right, the type of flies that they are, the larvae are in the ground adjacent to the structure. We own about that much space adjacent to the structure on the east side. So we're fairly confident they're not coming from our property, from the neighbors. So we can't kill larvae off our own property. That's how they treat that, right? So the front is hard surface, the west is hard surface, the back is hard surface.
But there are garden beds all the way around.
Garden beds can be treated, yeah, it's not a lot.
Yeah.
And again, it's the weirdest structure on earth, no one's gonna argue, but if, yeah, what we had talked about is if we do invest in the facility, it's actually pulling all the roof tiles off and making it more open air like you have in the grill, right? You see the open
Yeah.
trusses, everything's painted black, but yet there's nothing there to roost and lay eggs in and all
Right.
that, so. But yeah, it's, I don't know if it's a perfect answer, but it's not all that expensive, it's just,
Right.
that would help, give them no place to harbor, and then they might go away, but they're ground-based, they come
Yeah.
up and then they go in.
I was just curious if we ever could get some sort of number from someone about those different things, so the treatment.
Monthly service, right, they
and-
treat the
yeah.
soils monthly, so
Okay.
it's an Orkin kind of monthly charge,
Mhm.
you know, $100.
We're getting in somehow, most all of our attics at home.
And sealing
will
stuff
have
up,
some.
right, I mean.
But I think there's the structural things I hear, Steve, so, you know, over time here, I'm sure we'll need to get an estimate on what that would cost.
Yeah, those are all
Material
false
costs.
ceiling tiles, they're not structure tiles.
Yeah, that'd be nice to be
Just
able to.
ballpark,
Mhm.
nothing
Yeah.
too intense, but
Yeah.
I was just curious.
Well, thank you, Doug.
One of the things that came out at the end of the retreat was the importance of getting this discussion into the public process. And my plan for today was to, like in a couple, just using the headlines, remark it so that it's in the council record that we had this facility discussion. And if appropriate, we can just take that summary and have it be in the record so that if people want to know how that discussion occurred, obviously people can go listen to the tape, but then it's always part of the council record right from the beginning. And then I guess on the issue of next steps, regardless of what path or paths are chosen around the facilities, there's going to be a need for for lack of a better term, a pre-development work plan for both of the buildings, whether you're leasing or selling even. There'll be things you'll have to do. And so that needs to get developed as part of our conversation. Really, that would come from administration and with whatever input. A budget would have to be established for that. We'd have to know what the FTE impact would be. So I was planning on asking to at least have the income that just happens that your spreadsheet, that we actually talk about that a little bit in F&A, because as it is right now, with the building sort of only not used at all or partially used, I mean, we're losing, rough guess, 50 grand a year, because we're just not maximizing the potential of the real estate. So we just need to acknowledge that if that's where we are. And I'm confident, you've got lots of numbers. I just looked at, I do my back of the napkin. I don't do spreadsheets. But it's pretty clear that, just based on what the preschool was paying for the rec center, that was roughly $21,000, not counting triple net expenses that they were picking up. When I did look at the DVC, what I saw was that we were losing somewhere between $15,000 and $17,000 a year because it's underutilization. Might be a little different than that depending on how you're charging off our own use. But the fact remains, even those numbers are not triple net numbers, so there's an expense that it sounds like you've already identified. So whatever the choices are, like I said, not necessarily right or wrong answers, good, bad discussions. There's numbers associated with what we're losing right now and what it'll cost to pursue any or both or whatever the choices are. There's going to be a work plan associated with that. It's not as, we don't do it, but administration would have to do it. So, there's a certain amount of stuff we can talk about it at a policy level, but it does have implications for work plans and there are budget things you'll have to do. If nothing else, environmentals will have to be done. So.
Well, Dot, I think when we get this as a topic in the future, Cal, it would be easy to add as part of our packet, that memo, if that's what council would like to do. I think it was a nice outline that allows citizens to see that we were considering a lot of different factors
right.
In this process, including public outreach. I think they'd like to hear that.
Yeah, that's even in the very first objective. It says in a public process. So it's pretty clear right through it that that's what the intent of the summary, the planning right from the beginning was all about.
I think the restraints we have are certainly in some ways budget, and the other one is just in staff time to,
yep.
They're kind of looking at us for direction, and, we're, it's okay to have long processes. For Diane, I think it's been, a dozen years?
Yes, it has.
So, it is important, similar to the depot and deck, went through a lot of process and eventually came up with a plan, so we will need to move forward. So I don't want it to be too challenging for us, to feel like it's just too overwhelming. But at the same time, this is real important to the community, and I think that we'll continue this. I'll have it on a future COW as well. Other comments about the retreat? You can bring them up here, or feel free to send me if there's something you want to have in terms of a topic in the future. If there's something about the retreat itself that didn't work, you're welcome to let me know so that we can, I want these to be worthwhile, accomplish things, and be respectful of your time. And so if there's things that you want us to do differently, just let us know so that we can modify things so we can have a better retreat. Any other comments? We can move on to our next item. This is one we've actually handed out quite a bit, but have not yet had a chance to really look at. I do appreciate council members sending me, hand those down, please. So I'm handing out our draft work plan items. Here's a copy.
Do you have one more? Sure. I got it.
And I've got, I can do this afterwards, does that work? I apologize. So, really last year, as part of my first year as Mayor Pro Tem, everybody sent in and they put on top of their list what was most important. So I was able to use that in kind of an anonymous way, just to go through and prioritize. This year, I didn't get as much feedback. And so I won't say that this is as prioritized as last year. It's just a list of things that council has asked to consider working on. It's always in collaboration with the city and both what their capacity and of course what their own work items are, so that we can all be on the same page. There is one thing that stood out more than anything else. I think partly it was due to the flooding, 124th being closed, the long 2-3 hour commutes people experienced a couple of times in the winter here. And that was transportation and traffic. And there was a general sense I got from council members that that was something we really need to prioritize. Everyone recognized that we just don't have a ton of money to do stuff, that we have a state highway and a county road with the Woodinville Duval, and we just don't get to have impacts. But I think there was a general sense we would like to focus on that a bit more and be able to talk about what can we do short term. You know, can we hire someone from King County on those days to be across the valley so that they're talking to our own officer here and helping move traffic in a more efficient way. Certainly being more proactive. I know the mayor's many times asked us to, you know, whether it's going to Olympia or working with other committees in the county, to really have a larger voice for our own town about what we can do about turn lanes. And you know, the traffic engineering takes a long time to get studies and determine what's the best and what are the impacts downstream. That it's easy to say put a turn lane in, but sometimes it just moves the problem a block away. So they can be complicated, but everyone realized that we talk about it a lot, but it's time to get together, whether it's having a community meeting so the community can come out as well. So anyway, that was just a brief overview of one of those items that really popped up that the majority of council talked about. And they realized the answers weren't easy, but it's time to not just talk, but to sit down and say, what can we do, what can't we do, who do we need to go talk to? Mayor?
Can I add on to that?
Yes, absolutely.
So I think Steve's probably mentioned this before to council, but I can't remember if he mentioned the whole council. We're actually doing some study, getting some numbers on 203 right now. For the last 2 years, we've had our 203 corridor study on the legislative agenda, but without having updated data, it's really hard to get it to move. So we're getting that information, and we definitely need to move forward. For years, honestly, I've been pretty much the only one going out to regional events and state events and the federal government and talking about the issues that we're having. So I can't do it alone. We can get minor changes to policy with me going out, but we have to have everybody at the table working the issue, or else it won't happen. Just as an update on what is going on, King County Metro is looking at potentially putting a 0.2% sales tax on the ballot to fund metro services. That's a gap to beat Seattle to the punch so that Seattle doesn't get all the transit service by putting another levy on the ballot. They're also looking at going out to raise the county road fund to the max amount in the unincorporated areas, and that would be a levy that would be only voted on by the unincorporated residents. There's disagreement right now over which one to go first, but the bigger thing is that there's going to be a transportation package next year. So really, as soon as the legislative session starts or stops, we have to get moving on working that issue for next year. You know, we've been part of the 522 coalition, which did get some work done, but we need to expand that and also in our efforts, also bolster county efforts to get road funding and Snohomish County's city's efforts to get 522 finished and Highway 2 fixed. With all the development going on in South Snohomish County, we really did have the worst traffic for 6 weeks that I've seen in 20 years here. And that is really indicative of the lack of progress on our main highways. So it's gonna take a lot of work, and in the last budget, I didn't put a lobbyist in specifically because I knew we didn't have the money, but if council is amenable to it, we could probably contract with someone to help push some of those issues forward next year. And that also takes a big burden off of us as far as individually scheduling meetings, and they do that all for you. So I would be thrilled if council makes this one of your top priorities, because this is something that we really have to have all hands on deck for probably 5 to 6 years to get real achievement done. I've been sounding the alarm for a long time. Some of the ideas that we've been talking about are starting to gain traction in other areas, but we also have to build a coalition that has the manpower to get the data that we need to be able to push that idea forward. And so it's gonna take not just council, it's gonna take the school district, the fire district, city of Carnation, Monroe, and others to move any of that stuff forward, county or state level. So.
Mayor, thank you. I think there's a lot of opportunity, especially with some of the mayor's contacts outside of the city, to be able to have a bigger push politically as well. I hate to use the term the squeaky wheel gets the grease, but all of us have put some WD-40 on things that squeak because, and I think there's an opportunity throughout the entire valley. Now we're talking specifically issues, transportation, commute times and things for Duval, but I do think there's some things that we can work on in the valley to really help as well. I think we recognize our vulnerabilities. When they had to close 203 down because part of it was sloughing away. When Novelty Hill was closed several days, I noticed coming down for the meeting that traffic was already backed up from our main light all the way across the valley, up the hill. So it's a huge issue. And we're not going to solve it tonight, but I just wanted to recognize that that was a key thing that many of our council members brought. This list really isn't designed the way it's set up here to say this is our top priority or what's on the bottom. I think we had our ethics policy. It's something we've worked towards for quite a while. Doesn't mean it's not an important priority to us because it's not on the top of the list. I would ask you to take a look and go through and try to say what are your top priorities. Many folks mentioned the 2021-22 budget process that we're going to go through this year, trying to get that right, supporting the finance department as they prep, certainly setting up our meetings. We may have some special meetings this year to be able to help us really coordinate that entire process. There's a lot to it. We're excited to have our new finance director and be able to work with her on bringing that part forward. Many of these other items were mentioned as well. I can't remember exactly which ones we added that weren't on prior. I probably should have highlighted those in yellow. These were things that we put in last year that we just didn't get to. Some of them, like the employee policy, I think a lot of those things are being developed and ready to come forward. It's just trying to find time to bring them to council. So I'll try to be more efficient, especially with our time in the cow, so that whether it's with presentations or just work time for council to work together, so that we can start working on these. But I do encourage you to take a look. If there's something that council feels like we should take it off of here because it's no longer pertinent, please let me know. I did remove the items that we completed last year. I didn't see a reason to have them on a work plan when they're completed. But if you do see something that you think just is no longer pertinent, please let me know. If there's something that we really missed and now you're thinking about it, there really is a difference between a work plan, things you want to work on, and a priority list. Usually for council, priorities are pretty large. There are things like public safety, mobility, whether it's transportation or just walking town. So there's all these different things that we say these are priorities for us as a city, and they can help guide the budget process, and people try to fit things into those large priorities. That's a little different than just saying, here's our work plan. Ideally, work plan supports those priorities. But there is a way, even with the work plan, to say these are the top things we'd like to really put our energy in. And my hope is that, in the next month, we can look at this list and try to prioritize it. Yes, Dr.
Actually, I have a question for the mayor. I noticed in one of our emails that the regional council is going to be doing a vote, I think in May on the 2050.
Yeah.
And my question for you is there anything you need from us for that?
Yes, and in fact, we have scheduled PSRC to come out and do a briefing on the 2050. The key to remember about 2050 is it's overarching. Where the real rubber meets the road is going to be at the King County Growth Management Planning Council, and we definitely will not share the same opinion on some key issues with other cities in the Snoqualmie Valley. So that's when 2050 is approved. Overall, it's fine. It's the GMPC and how it's implemented that's going to be the biggest challenge, because that's where all our growth targets come from, and all of those types of things. And that's, I think, based on the makeup of GMPC, going to be challenging for our jurisdiction. One of the key issues is, while we don't want to expand our growth numbers very much at all, we still have to be able to be sustainable, and depending on what the county throws at us, we may not have the opportunity to become sustainable and resilient because there's those population thresholds. So we're going to have to pay a real close eye on that, and then what they typically do is reach out to planning staff and start to look at your buildable lands and all of those types of things with our planning folks and start that early work. But I think watching what GMPC is doing, if somebody has time to monitor that committee, Diana Hart was doing that, that's where the attention should really be focused more than anywhere else.
Is there any input on this work plan, the way it's laid out now? Any specific topics you'd like to talk about? Is there anything that you feel like we could remove now, or something that we just missed big time should add it on here? Yes, Michelle?
I think affordable housing should be in its own little category, because I'm not sure that, that annexations, the NUGA, and any of those are gonna be bringing us any affordable housing, so I almost feel like that should be a separate category.
Thank you for that. Just in the last week, I had met to talk with Kathy Lambert, and she's heading up a committee, I think it's on housing, and she specifically asked if we could take a look in Duval to see if there's opportunities for affordable housing. I did mention the Big Rock property, that part of that overall layout, as I recall, was to have some more affordable housing. The term seems to be awfully flexible in Duval, where some new affordable housing homes were $750,000. She said at the county level, some of the things they've done, which they're happy to share, is they came up with designs for affordable housing so that builders that wanted to move more rapidly, the county has already approved these plans. All they had to do is take them. There's still permitting and other things that they have to go through, but the design's already been approved. If you're building that design, and they had several of them, different types of housing as well, but the idea behind that for the county was to help streamline and reduce cost for the builders so they can get these online as quickly as possible. So she had several, and she said they have some expertise and things they can provide and support that way. They don't have money per se to put into those in other towns. But she gave me a few ideas, and I told her I'd like to talk to council about that. So I'll add that if everybody agrees to our plan. I think that's, it's always hard when you have a list and something like that comes up and people are said, really, you didn't even think that was, so thank you for that. I think that's really critical. Other thoughts on our work plan?
Are we
Yeah.
supposed to look at this and get back to you what we think are prioritizations?
I I would like, yes, I think there's a couple things. One is to see if we've left something off. If you think that there's something on there that no longer needs to be on, or something we need to modify, sometimes it's just how you word things. The other is I still like to have a bit of a priority from council so that we spend our time with things we think are most important. Clearly, traffic is one of those that really moved up, and the mayor mentioned as well. You know, she would be very pleased if council prioritizes it and we put some time, energy, and potentially monies into that as well. So I think having a list prioritized, it doesn't mean it's perfect. It doesn't mean things on the bottom of the list still aren't important. And so if everyone's amenable, I'll send out an email. I'll attach this. I like to make those anonymous at this stage of the game so that as we develop it, you don't feel like, you know, your name on, you know, your own personal priority list. We'll have that opportunity at council to do it publicly, but I think at this stage it's just nice to say, hey, here's what I would prioritize. It wouldn't have to be the whole list, but kind of that top 10 would be really helpful. And then I can put council's priority list together. And certainly in the budget process, we'll be working very closely with the departments as they said, hey, here's our priorities as well, and things we need to move forward.
I just had one comment in regards to transportation. The mayor had mentioned, you know, going out for some monies in regards to getting those folks, lobbyists. When we did the sewer treatment plant, which I believe Steve Leszewski could tell us more about, if we have questions, if anybody has questions, we had to go out and do. Didn't we have to do that, Steve? For the sewer treatment plant to get the grant funding for that?
I think we did.
Anyway, the point is, it does have to be very strategic, and, you know, a lot of people contributing to help get that kind of a big idea moving.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, larger cities have their own lobbyists. They're full-time. They are in Olympia constantly. Most of the legislatures know the lobbyists, and they see them as a benefit. Smaller cities, we either go down on our own and meet with folks, or hire somebody that can help out. The lobbyists are very good at what they do. They understand the process. They understand who to talk to on certain topics. I know at times I've gone down to testify before the House and Senate in Olympia. I always had a lobbyist with me. They don't talk, but they work with you a week ahead of time. What are you going to say? How you say it? They're always very, you know, keep it extremely short. They don't have much time. You get one shot to get up there, talk to them, and make sure that you've told them exactly what's important and why. And ask for what you want to ask for. Make it really clear, you know, because sometimes people talk, leave, and you go, what do they want? So it can be very helpful, but it doesn't come free, like legal services or other things. That's their livelihood and their business. But they are very good at it. You can also have them come in and just give advice on how to couch things. I hate to say that's kind of the way business is done, but it is a big part of how things get done. Those lobbyists are good at what they do, and while they can't get everything that they ask for, they make sure that those that need to hear fully understand what those things are that are needed by a city like the city of Duval. The other thing that really hits home is when our citizens call or email and let their legislators know exactly what they want or what they don't want. Those have a big impact. You know, there's always that 2 or 3 that, you know, but even when they get 10, the number I heard, they figure it's about at least 10 to 1. So for everybody who calls you, there's at least 10 more that feel that way. So you get 100 people that, you know, and out of a town of 7,000 people, but you get even 100 people that contact someone in Olympia and said, we need a turn lane, we need wider roads, we need whatever it is. They figure that there's 1,000 people at least that feel that way. And so they take those pretty seriously. Other thoughts? Well, thank you. I think we can go ahead and take a break here if there isn't anything
My
else.
priorities.
Anything else from staff? I think we're good to go. So our meeting is adjourned.